The Galactic Queen,
Incredible. The detail is
Irindra,
breathtaking.
ruler of the
It
star
feels so
system
alive.
Xylar 7, was
I
accustomed
call
to
upon the wings
grandeur,
of fate to reveal
power,
your path.
and
For
absolute
I am
control.
the guardian of the
Her
eternal
arrival
weave.
at a distant planet often caused tremors in the social and political landscape, for where Irindra walked, destinies shifted and fates were rewritten. So when her royal entourage descended on a small, obscure settlement on the fringes of the star cluster, it was expected that her steps would lead to the manor of a local dignitary. The structure, a sprawling edifice of transparent alloys and flowing energy conduits, was unmistakable on the planet's surface map. Yet, in the dim twilight of the planet's twin suns, even monumental buildings could deceive. Irindra, determined and impatient, disembarked from her hovering throne carrier without waiting for her aides. She glided toward the entrance with the grace of a predator, her multi-limbed attendants following closely, each echoing the faint hum of her personal energy shield. The door slid open at her touch, or so she believed. Inside, however, the atmosphere was alien in ways she had not anticipated. Instead of ceremonial halls or opulent furnishings, there was a silence punctuated by a strange, rhythmic hum. The air was thick with the scent of something organic, something alive. And in the center of the room, she saw a young human man, kneeling before a mechanical construct that seemed to defy gravity, its translucent form shifting and reshaping like a living fractal. Irindra froze. Her instinct screamed danger, yet her curiosity rooted her in place. The man looked up, startled, eyes wide. They were ordinary human eyes, full of fear and something else, recognition. "Who?" she began, but the words caught in her throat as the construct flickered and responded. It bent toward the man, its form coalescing into a humanoid shape, but with multiple faces, each speaking a different language simultaneously. "I am not what you seek," the man said suddenly, his voice firm despite the terror in his eyes. "This is not your palace. You have entered the wrong house." Irindra's eyebrows arched. She had made errors before, but none as egregious as entering the wrong dwelling of a lowly human. Her pride flared, and yet the curiosity that had defined her reign urged her to stay. "Explain," she demanded. The man, he introduced himself as Kale, gestured toward the fractal construct. "This is the core of Viridian. I am its guardian. Your presence here is unprecedented. No queen has ever crossed the outer thresholds unannounced. You must leave." Irindra studied the core. It pulsed with iridescent energy, and each pulse seemed to resonate with her own life force. She had traveled galaxies to witness and acquire artifacts of power, but this was unlike anything in her empire. "Artifact?" she asked, intrigued despite herself. "You dare call a queen an intruder?" Kale's jaw tightened. "I call truth what it is. The core is not for rulers or kings. It chooses its keepers." The queen, used to subjugating and claiming, laughed softly. "Then perhaps it has chosen poorly, for the wrong house I have entered is now in possession of a queen. You will bow human and yield the core." Kale's gaze hardened. "I will not. Not even for a queen of the stars. The core is alive. It knows intentions, and it does not bend to tyranny." Irindra felt a pulse of something she had never experienced, a flicker of doubt. The core's energy seemed to weave into her mind, probing, analyzing, revealing not her lineage or her titles, but her desires. And in that probing, she realized how shallow her pursuits had been. She had conquered planets, commanded fleets, yet she had never faced a force that judged not her power, but her character. Kale rose, and the core expanded its fractal tendrils, filling the room with shifting lights. "You do not belong here," he said, his voice echoing strangely as if layered with multiple harmonics. "Leave, and you may survive the revelation you are about to witness. Irindra's pride surged. To be turned away by a human? Preposterous. Yet the sensation she felt, the pull of the core, was undeniable. She stepped closer, and the room shifted around her. It was not just a construct. It was a window, a conduit to infinite possibilities. The walls became transparent, revealing stars she had never charted, planets she had never touched. And in the center, she saw not her reflection, but myriad versions of herself, some benevolent, some cruel, some lost, and some at peace. You see, Kale said softly, the core reveals truth. It shows the paths you have taken and those you might take. Most are terrified to face themselves. Irindra staggered back, the vision striking her with an intensity she had not imagined. In her mind's eye, she saw the countless lives she had influenced, the empires she had built and destroyed. And then, something unexpected, a world where she had never sought power, but knowledge, a life where her curiosity and compassion shaped galaxies instead of fear. She whispered, her voice trembling. This cannot be real. I am the queen. The core does not care for titles, Kale replied. It cares for essence. Irindra felt a tear, unbidden, trace a path down her cheek. For the first time in her existence, she was confronted not by a rival, a weapon, or a rebellion, but by herself, by her potential to be more than a monarch defined by conquest. Kale approached cautiously. The core has recognized your hesitation. That is a beginning. But to wield it, to understand it, you must renounce your pretense. You must choose a path not dictated by fear or ambition, but by clarity and empathy. The queen's mind raced. Power had always been the language she understood, yet here was something beyond it, a force that demanded surrender not of loyalty or territory, but of ego. She could feel the core stretching toward her, its fractal tendrils brushing against her consciousness. It asked for acknowledgement, not submission. Finally, she knelt, not out of fear, but out of willingness. All will learn, she said. I will understand. The core pulsed violently, and the room was bathed in radiant energy. Irindra felt herself expanding, dissolving, and reforming. Knowledge flooded her mind. The histories of civilizations long extinct, the mechanics of stars and voids, the songs of beings whose existence transcended time itself. And through it all, she felt Kale's steady presence, guiding rather than commanding, reminding her that true power lay in wisdom, not domination. Hours, or perhaps eons, passed. When the light finally dimmed, Irindra rose, transformed. She no longer felt the need to conquer or command. The hunger for absolute control had been replaced by something unfamiliar yet invigorating: understanding. Kale studied her silently, then nodded. You have chosen wisely. Few ever do. Irindra looked around the room, then out to the stars beyond. I came to claim, she admitted. And instead, I have been claimed by something greater. Kale smiled faintly. The wrong house indeed. Yet perhaps it was exactly the house the core intended for you to find. Irindra laughed softly, a sound without arrogance, without malice. Then let the galaxy remember not the queen who conquered, but the queen who was awakened. The core shimmered, its energy now calm and steady. Irindra extended a hand toward Kale. Will you join me in guiding the worlds that seek wisdom, rather than fear? Kale hesitated briefly, then placed his hand in hers. Together, he said. The queen, once feared across star systems, now stood not as a ruler, but as a guide, a luminous beacon for civilizations that had lost their way. And the house, mistakenly entered, had become a nexus of transformation, a place where destiny was not seized but chosen. From that day forward, tales spread across the galaxies of a queen who entered the wrong house and discovered a truth far greater than conquest. Entire civilizations changed course, inspired by her example. And somewhere in the quiet hum of the core, Irindra felt a satisfaction deeper than victory, deeper than power. She felt connection, purpose, and the infinite potential of what she could yet become. The wrong house, it seemed, had been the right one all along. The core pulsed one final time, its fractal tendrils retreating as if bowing in acknowledgement. Irindra stood in the center of the room, no longer the proud, imperious queen who had stormed in, but something new, aware, humbled, and infinitely curious. She looked around at Kale, at the construct, at the room that had seemed ordinary at first glance. Now it shimmered like a living organism, every corner alive with energy, every surface reflecting possibilities. She realized that this wrong house had never been wrong at all. It had been a crucible, a mirror, and a guide. Kale stepped beside her. "You are changed," he said simply, but there was a trace of awe in his voice. "The core will now show you worlds that need guidance, civilizations that can rise or fall depending on what they are given. You may lead, or you may nurture. The choice is yours." Irindra's gaze drifted toward the windowless walls, now transparent, revealing the endless galaxies beyond. Stars swirled in arcs of brilliant colors, nebulae pulsing in rhythms she could almost hear. She felt the weight of her old ambitions, the need to dominate, to conquer, fade like smoke, replaced by a profound sense of responsibility. "I have spent centuries chasing power," she murmured, "but I have never truly understood it. Until now." Kale nodded. "Knowledge without understanding is empty. Wisdom without compassion is dangerous. The core ensures both. That is why it chose you, not for your crown, but for your capacity to grow." Irindra closed her eyes. A vision unfolded. Entire worlds lifted out of war, ecosystems restored, societies thriving not under fear, but under guidance. She saw beings across the galaxies, reaching toward a future shaped by insight and balance. And in the vision, she herself was not a ruler imposing will, but a presence inspiring potential. When she opened her eyes, she felt a strange lightness, as if she were both herself and something greater. "Kale," she said, voice steady. "Then let us begin. Let us be the bridge between what is and what could be." He smiled. Together. The core pulsed once more, brighter than ever, and then, as if satisfied, settled into a steady, rhythmic glow. Irindra extended her hands toward it, feeling the energy flow through her, not as a weapon, not as a crown, but as understanding. The wrong house had become a sanctuary, a seat of awakening. She stepped outside, the twin suns of the planet casting golden light across the horizon. Her attendants looked on, unsure of how to respond to the subtle shift in her aura. She did not issue commands. She did not demand allegiance. Instead, she simply smiled, the kind of smile that could reshape perceptions, ignite hope, and inspire loyalty without coercion. News of Irindra's transformation spread quickly. Across planets and star systems, beings whispered of the queen who had entered the wrong house and found herself. Leaders sought counsel rather than confrontation. Societies once divided by fear discovered paths to harmony. Even rival queens and emperors paused in their pursuits, curious to understand the force that had reshaped a monarch without a single battle. And Irindra herself, once a figure defined by conquest, now became a legend of enlightenment. Kale remained at her side, a guide and friend, the human who had shown her the way when no advisor, no general, and no scholar could. Together, they traveled not to subjugate, but to awaken. The core hummed in the background, a quiet, constant reminder that power without understanding was nothing, and that the true measure of a queen, or any ruler, was not how much she could take, but how much she could help others realize. And in that realization, Irindra finally understood. The wrong house was never wrong. It was destiny disguised as a mistake, a chance to see herself not as a conqueror, but as a catalyst for something far greater than any throne, fleet, or empire. As she looked toward the stars, she whispered softly to herself, a vow carried across light years. I will not reign to rule. I will reign to awaken. And with that, the galaxies seemed to sigh in relief, as though it had been waiting all along for a queen who finally understood the true weight of her own potential.